So he's saying all these nice things to me, which
Right.
makes me feel like, oh, he's a dad. He really loves me. You know, he's already established earlier in the letter, I know I was good to you and mommy, because everyone knows. Who this everyone is, I don't know. But then he starts telling me that I'm a good person, because this is like this build up. They build you up so they could drop you, right? And they build you up so they can confuse you more, because then, and I think probably around this time was when they were trying to get my mother's body exhumed, and I had to give DNA evidence because there was so much brought up that it wasn't my mother's body. And so he's obviously trying to prop me up to do something for him. So let's see if in this letter, because I haven't read this in God knows how long. Let's see if he's trying to set me up for an ask. Let's see where the ask is.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in Richland County history. Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife Noreen and burying her body in the basement of his new home in Erie, Pennsylvania.
The 12-year-old son finally took the stand.
As I heard a scream, I heard a thud. It was about this loud.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
When I was 12 years old, my testimony sent my father to prison for murdering my mother. This podcast serves as a type of therapy and reconciliation for myself, and it is my hope that it helps anyone who has experienced deception, betrayal, and dark trauma. I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Murder. Hey movers, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Moving Past Murder. Just wanted to say I am really enjoying getting to know you guys when I do my Instagram lives, which are every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We discuss the latest episode of Moving Past Murder on my Instagram channel, which is at Collier Landry. And it's really cool getting to know you guys and hearing your feedback from the episodes, sharing my life with you guys, learning a little bit about you as well, which is really fun. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor, click like and subscribe. I'm done with the pitch. Oh, and yes, coming up, we are finally putting together the Patreon page. I know I've said this before, but I obviously didn't figure out Patreon. We now figured it out. We got a bunch of extra content to load, 3 different subscriber tiers. Your support is greatly appreciated. That will be patreon.com/Collier Landry, which is for this podcast, Moving Past Murder. So thank you very much. Wanted to give a shout out to one of my people that is contacting me on social media. This is Rayon Cubbins on Instagram, and she has DM'd me. And she says this: to be honest, your father just makes me utter the words, what the fuck? Like, it's hard to fathom someone that is that self-observed and out of touch with reality. But if I didn't know someone like that personally, I wouldn't believe it. I know that you guys really like hearing the letters from my father that he has written me from prison over the years. And today's episode is going to feature one of those letters. Now, as you guys may or may not know, I randomly pick these letters. So when I'm opening them and reading them, I am looking at them for the first time since, depending on when they're from, sometimes almost 30 years ago. So it's kind of like a little trip down memory lane with me. But this week's episode and this week's letter is really interesting. Let's put it that way. A lot of you reach out and you're dealing with sociopathy, psychopathy, or just not good feelings about the people that are close around you, and you're wondering if you're feeling the same way. Well, I am here to tell you, look, I've done enough of this in my life, dealing with this man and dealing with my situation, that I really hope that what I share with you guys really helps. And I think it does. So back by popular demand, Brenda,
Yes.
we have letters from my father, because
Letters
everybody loves them.
From your father.
Diary of a Sociopath, part 3. We'll stop doing parts, because why do parts? It
Right.
doesn't matter. So here I have a bundle of letters. This one, okay, so you know what? I could go by the dates on these. I don't even need to see the date, because I could see how much a U.S. stamp was.
Oh, wow.
It says 25 cents, and I'm like, yeah, that was
Whoa.
a while ago.
That was a while
but this
ago.
one this envelope has bunnies on it. If everyone
wow.
can see. Yeah, this has bunnies. So maybe this was an Easter sort of thing, and this was addressed to Collier L. Boyle. So that means that
You were young.
yeah, this was an early one. This was an early one. Trip back in the day. There's lots of 29-cent stamp ones. What are stamps now? I don't even know.
Oh my gosh.
Stamps
Never
for
buy
55
them,
cents?
but I think
Really?
so.
I don't know anybody that buys stamps. So anyways, yes, so we have these lovely bunny labels on here. And then, I'm going to need my glasses. This is really hard to read. It's very faint. So this was when he was at WARCi, Warren Correctional Institution, which is in
He's
Lebanon,
no longer
Ohio.
there.
No, he hasn't been there forever. So I want to say Warren, because there's Warren Correctional Institution in Warren, Ohio. And then there's Warren Correctional WARCi, which is in Lebanon, Ohio. And that's where he was, which is down by outside Cincinnati, I think. So let's see what this is. Oh, nothing. There's no letter in here. It's just
the
NCAA,
envelope.
just in time for March Madness, everybody. Here is an NCAA Final Four bracket of my father's picks, which are highlighted in pink.
So he sent you his
pick
picks.
there. Yeah, he sent me his NAACP pick. Or NCAA picks for the Final Four. So this is 1991 NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Championship. So let's go with this one.
Okay.
Out of the envelope. This is dated Sunday morning, 6th of November, 1994. This is like a book, though. See, this is the thing. He would send these letters, and he would type them, and they were like...
Yeah.
It was like a book. So this is Sunday morning, 6th of November, 1994. Dear son Collier, well, as anticipated, I received your last letter last night and was very thrilled to hear from you and to receive your photos. You are a very handsome young man and photograph very well. I am proud of your composure. Your mother would be very proud of you. Your mother would be very proud of you! Exclamation point. So-and-so, I won't mention this name. This is obviously somebody I think I went to high school, like homecoming or something with.
Okay.
So blank female individual seems like a very nice girl, and I am glad that you have a decent female friend in your life, so to speak. You will have years, perhaps a lifetime, of meeting and making new acquaintances, and that includes female friends, but I am glad there is someone that you can socialize with. I approve of her from her photo, although I do not know her personally or her family. I am certain that George and Susan keep an accurate eye on that! Exclamation point. There's so much to unpack in just the first sentence, right?
Yes.
Just the first paragraph, there's so much.
Yes. Your mother would be so proud of you if he hadn't killed her.
Sure. There's that. And then, but then there's the female. See, I really am trying to read this out without glasses. This is how tired I am. But this is. So for those of you that don't know or that are just tuning in. So my father was a womanizer. Like a legit womanizer. Multiple affairs, multiple girlfriends. Obviously, the last girlfriend he impregnated. I have a half sister who was born 12 days before my father was arrested. So just the fact that he's sitting here saying, I mean, aside from the fact that he says your mother would be very proud of you, exclamation point.
Right.
But you will have years, and then he puts in parentheses, perhaps a lifetime.
Huh.
Perhaps a lifetime?
Perhaps.
So of meeting and making new acquaintances, and that includes female friends. But I am glad there is someone that you can socialize with.
Huh.
So is it? So when he says perhaps a lifetime, so what if I got married during that lifetime? Would that mean that I would continue to have
Acquaintances?
Acquaintances, like female friend acquaintances?
Yeah.
Boy,
It doesn't sound like he really valued women.
Oh no, he was a total, come on. I will try to answer some of your questions in your letter as best I can from the font of experience that I have within myself. You will get straight answers from me, which I think are better for you to deal with. You will get straight answers from me, which I feel are better to deal with.
He hasn't given you straight answers yet.
He has never given me straight answers. This is really funny. But not funny too. It's kind of dark. It's a dark, twisted sense of humor here on Moving Past Murder today.
Yes.
I think your schoolwork sounds fine to me in spite of the C in chemistry. You are now aware that you must work very hard all of the time, as a lost grade can swing on the final exam. I have had experience where I lost an A by 1 point on an exam. I then learned that I must work harder to make certain I have a good cushion of points to get the letter grades that I wanted or needed for professional school. This is a valuable lesson for you to remember. Do not be complacent, or it will bite you in the ass. Stay ahead of the envelope, and you should do fine and not create anxieties for yourself. Remember, anything worth it will cost you in terms of time, personal life, relationships, etc. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Only your family will care about you. Others will just use you for their own purposes, which is very interesting, because I was just talking about certain individuals.
Yes, you were.
Using me like to shoot their documentary for free and not paying me. Hope they're listening. Stay strong and positive in whatever endeavor you choose. Be polite about things, although you will see successful, obnoxious people in your lifetime. I do not feel that it is a personal level of conduct that is acceptable to me. It was never acceptable to your mother. It should not be acceptable to you. I mean,
I like the comment, though, about biting you in the ass, because it's kind of funny because you're the one who bit him in the ass.
Yes, or don't be complacent. Yes, because it will bite you in the ass. So is he referring to like he got complacent because he just thought that he was smarter than the police and therefore he could do whatever the hell he wanted?
Well, hell, he wasn't smarter than a 12-year-old because
Wasn't
you took
smarter
him
than a
down.
12-year-old. That should be isn't that a show?
Yeah,
Like
are
Fox is
you
like smarter than a fifth grader
than a
or
fifth
something?
grader? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something silly like that. So, yeah, this is this is very interesting.
I don't think a C in chemistry is that bad. I think I had a C in chemistry in high school as well.
I'm almost wondering if like grades even matter. But anyways, let's continue, because I feel like this is gonna be a good one. It'll be a two-parter, I'm sure. But like, I agree on mommy's friends. They were never friends from the get-go. It seems to me that all they did was take and use your mother for their own purposes. It also seems that mommy unfortunately was duped by them. I am glad Shelley Bowden still has contact with you. I am not at all surprised that the rest of mommy's acquaintances have vanished. Fair weather friends all. On my questions about the case, I understand your desire to forget things as they are painful, but I can assure you that they are just as painful, if not more, to me personally. They are questions that must be asked and answered. I know the answers to some of them, as the investigation has turned up many interesting things. I just need to know if you are aware of them. This is the logic that I am utilizing with you. I mean, okay, it's just so much here. On the other hand, I am glad that you have happy memories. At least I was not that bad of a father to you, eh? I know I was not a bad father, so do not worry about that. I did the right thing for you and mommy all the time, and everyone knows it all too well. Sherry still complains that I did everything for mommy and you and not enough for her.
Wow.
So for those of you who don't know, so Sherry was the girlfriend, the mistress, that signed my mother's name on the documents to get the house where they found my mother's body.
Where they buried her in the basement.
Yeah. But also, what is this, like, what are all these things that people are aware of? Like, that's what I want to know.
The other thing that I really loved was how it was affecting him, and he was hurting so much more than everybody else.
Yeah. Let's go back to that. That line is great. On my questions about the knee slapper. Here we go. Yeah, on my questions about the case, I understand your desire to forget things as they are painful, but I can assure you that they are just as painful, if not more, to me personally. There are questions that must be asked and answered. I know the answers to some of them, as the investigation has turned up many, many interesting things. I just need to know if you are aware of them. This is the logic that I'm utilizing with you. On the other hand, I am glad that you have happy memories. At least I wasn't that bad of a father to you, eh? I know I was not a bad father, so do not worry about that. I did the right thing for you and Mommy all the time, and everyone knows it all too well. Sherry still complains that I did everything for Mommy and you and not enough for her.
She still complains?
Yeah, so this is Sunday, the 6th of November, 1994. So what I'm wondering is this like, are they still together or what? But who are these other people that know how good he knows that I did the right thing for you and Mommy all the time, and everyone knows it all too well. So who is everyone that knows this all too well? So
his imaginary friends?
Just to unpack this. So I guess what I'm curious is he trying to, I mean, I guess this is gaslighting, right? Or this is like,
oh, totally.
Where do they say like coercive control, where I think that like you spout your own narrative, right? You spout your own narrative and you end up, so this is like, okay, so this is again something that like, because there's so many of you guys that reach out to me, right? And they're asking that you guys love these letters because then we get to see these like amazing little tidbits that nobody ever gets to see, right? So I think that here, the big takeaway is like, who are these people that know it all too well? And like, he's setting this narrative, like, you don't need to tell me because I already know that I was a great, wonderful person. I was always looking out for you and your mother. I was such a great father. Sherry was jealous of you guys because I did so much for you. What exactly was that? Abusing me? Murdering my mother? Was that doing a lot for us? Was that like a good thing that you were? I mean, this is just, but this is like this gaslighting, coercive control, all these things that are just so insidious. And then you're telling this to, so I was 1994. So I was I 16? I was 16, I guess. I was 16, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What exactly was Sherry jealous of? Did she want to be buried in the basement too?
Exactly. Sherry still complains that I did everything for Mommy and you and not enough for her. It is important for you to realize you are a good person. You are. You have no need to hang your head in any shameful manner whatsoever. Not because of me or this case or your mother or your family. Understand? Don't let people talk you down. Don't let people talk you out of your dreams or your heritage. You are a strong and positive person with good genes. We are all proud of you. Who is we? Who are the we? Is it like the royal we? Like this is like the dude from the royal we. I mean, so we are all proud of you. So,
right.
And here he is like, and this is what they do. They like, so it's like the Stockholm syndrome. This is what I think at least. You know, you have your captor and they just beat you down so much, but then they, you know, you're starved for 10 days, but then the other guy comes in. It's a good cop, bad cop thing, right? They beat you down, then somebody comes in with a plate of food, lets you take a shower, lets you use the toilet, right? And they're like, oh, and then they ask you questions. Oh, you're really good. You're this. It's this manipulation that this like this this seesaw. What is it? What was it? The teeter totter you play on? Seesaw, up and down. Ooh. Yep. Like that's what it is with your emotions. You like teeter totter with your emotions. Yep. So they're telling you one thing and you're doing another. It's fucking crazy, and it makes you crazy. That's the thing. Is because what he's doing is he's saying all these nice things to me. Which makes me feel like, oh, he's a dad. He really loves me. You know, he's already established earlier in the letter, like, I was really good to you. I know I was a good father. You don't have to say that. I know I was a good father for X amount of reasons that everyone knows. I know I was good to you and Mommy because everyone knows. Who this everyone is, I don't know. But then he starts telling me that I'm a good person because this is like this build up. They build you up so they could drop you, right? And they build you up so they can confuse you more because then, and I think probably around this time was when they were trying to get my mother's body exhumed, and I had to give DNA evidence because I was curious because there was so much brought up that it wasn't my mother's body and that and the eye color was different and her weight was different. And of course, me and my sort of thing. And I remember my adopted father, George, taking me to this place in Medina, Ohio, to this like, facility where I had to give blood for DNA test to see if I am matched. And I just remember all this happening. I think this is around this same time. It's got to be around the same time because it was around like this would be, I would have been like a junior in high school. So this would have been it. So I think that, so he's obviously trying to prop me up to do something for him. So let's see if in this letter, because I haven't read this in God knows how long. Let's see if he's trying to set me up for an ask. Let's see where the ask is.
Okay.
Oh, yep. Here we go.
Ah.
I just caught a little bit of something else. Yes, I am in prison. I am not in prison for a crime I committed or had anything to do with. I am here because I allowed my attorneys to conduct a trial in the manner they did. I did not know about the law. It was a great big act for Mayer, which was the prosecutor, James J. Mayer, and Whitney, which is my father's high-powered defense lawyer. He had a couple of them, but Bob Whitney, who is still practicing to this day. Today is March 9th, 2022, and I believe he is still practicing law at like age 84. And obviously very, coherent and can practice law. It takes on like big capital murder cases and shit like that. He was representing a serial killer a few years ago when I made a murder of Mansfield. He was buried in it. Yeah, I mean, he's like a legit attorney. So back to this, he says, and Mayer, so the prosecutor, Whitney, and then Henson, he's referring to Judge James Henson, who was the judge of the trial. You must recall there is no evidence against me. As Tom Adgate tells me, the playing field was not level for my trial. All had their own individual motives for riding my back to a victory, and it all seems to have centered on political advancement and money. I don't know who this Tom Adgate is. I think this might have been his I think this might have been his appellate attorney. Which, if you're trying to get a guy in a very, let's just call it what it is. Who has more of an agenda here? The prosecutor for the case, the defense attorney that defended my father, right? Who is a more than competent, very successful defense attorney, and the judge that presided on the case. Or the guy who takes the appellate case to try to get the really famous murderer whose son testified against him at trial in one of the largest cases in Ohio history out of prison. Who's the headline chaser? Who could be the ambulance chaser? Now, look, I'm not trying to this is not an admonishment of Tom Adgate and what he's doing. He obviously probably had, his reasons for taking it and whatever that is, and I'm not excoriating for him for this at all. What I am saying is that it's interesting because he's talking about people's agendas involved in this, as if it's it's more blame shifting, it's manipulation, it's gaslighting, it's blame the other people, it's everyone else's fault but my father's. Nothing he did was wrong, right?
Of course.
And here we go. It's centered on political. So just to finish the last, and it all seems to have centered on political advancement and money. Then the next paragraph. I am innocent of the crimes for which I am convicted. I killed no one. I planned nothing to cause the disappearance or death of Mommy. I don't even know if it is Mommy. Okay, so this was around this time because there was all this hoopla about her not being. So this makes sense.
So she magically ended up in the basement of the house that he bought for his mistress. That was a brand new house.
Magic.
No one had lived there before, right?
Yes. Well, no, people had lived there before, but they got out of the house. And they must have planted her, but I don't know.
Oh, they planted her body.
She might have been in cahoots with them, know them, and said, hey, even though when they left, she was still alive and with me. But I mean, I don't know. Oh, here we go. Doesn't it seem peculiar to you that I was never, and my medical experts, were never able to examine the evidence against me, the body? Doesn't it seem peculiar to you that in our system of government and laws that the defendant was not able to confront the evidence against him? This is the type of justice fostered by the small minds in Mansfield. So Brenda, obviously we just last week released this episode with Deb Kirkland, who was talking about his experience in the Jim Williams trial, which was the foundation for the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil and the film by Clint Eastwood. And he was talking about, because he wrote that book, Lawyer Games, and talking about the games that lawyers play, prosecutors, but most specifically defense attorneys, and how defense attorneys in discovery are able to manipulate evidence. And his specific example was placing photographs out of numerical order or out of sequential order they were shot in, and put them in a specific numerical order, which is used to confuse the jury and convince them of innocence, or convince them that there was some sort of malfeasance or shenanigans going on the crime scene where things were moved around for the purpose of photographing it. And this particular thing was a chair and a belt buckle that was directly involved with the trajectory of a bullet that was fired through the person that was killed. Right? So my father is literally suggesting that he had no time to examine the evidence. Well, it's really hard to examine a body that has been buried, and he knows this because he went to medical school. Bury this body that was decomposing for 25 days in a shallow grave.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
That he dug.
That he dug.
Yeah.
Of course. Like, what are you going to do? Get fingerprints off of it? Like, we know this. Yeah. And this was, again, like one of the things I wanted to talk about in that episode with Depp, but I didn't. But it's like there was a lot of circumstantial evidence with my father because there was no physical evidence. And that's why it ended up being, now I know this as an adult. They didn't want to tell me this as a kid. Why my testimony ended up being so necessary is because there was no blood. There were no fibers, but there was circumstantial evidence. You rented the jackhammer. You asked about lowering the basement floor in the house. You asked about, you bought the tarp that she was buried in. Collier saw that tarp months previous. It was kept on the porch of the home. So all these things that were like renting the jackhammer 3 days early. And I was just interviewed on the Scary Guy podcast, which this episode will come out this Friday, March 11th. Yes. So when you guys are watching or listening to this, you guys are, just so you know, on Monday the 14th, I will be on the Scary Guy podcast. They're a UK-based podcast, very cool. But they had just watched a murder in Mansfield. And we got into this discussion about evidence and things of that nature. But talking about how it was all circumstantial and how this is what ultimately ended up getting my father convicted on top of my testimony, which was like pinpointed. And this gives us a time. But again, my father, because they were under the impression from the film that my father, that it was a crime of passion. And he was saying how my mother came out and he pushed her and her head split on the furniture, and that's how she had the blunt force trauma. And then he put the plastic bag over her head, not to suffocate her, but because he didn't want to look at her face after she was already dead, and he tried to perform CPR on it. They didn't understand that this was all premeditated. And look, the film was not about a murder, even though it's called A Murder in Mansfield. It's about the consequences of violence, right? But I understand what they were saying, why they were saying this, because they were like, well, but he seemed so convincing. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's a sociopath. That's what they do. They're really good. They can convince you that the sky is pink, like this shirt. That's how good they are. Anyone ever bought a used car? Try that times 1,000,000. That's how good these people are. They are so good at deceiving you and so good at manipulating you. So this is my father doing this to a then 16-year-old kid whose mother he murdered. So he starts with saying, first of all, like, you're a great kid. You look so handsome. I'm so proud of you. Then it goes into, I took really good care of you. Obviously you feel this way because everybody knows it. I took care of your mother. Even my girlfriend who I impregnated, who signed the document for the house where I buried your mother, she was jealous of you guys because I took such good care of you. And I am committed. And don't you agree? And you're a good person. Don't let this bring you down because I'm innocent. And then it goes into his whole thing on why he's innocent. It's all a calculated manipulation from page one. It's the setup. And why? Because like you said at the beginning of the episode, he's got a lot of time on his hands. And when you have a lot of time on your hands, what they say, idle time is the devil's workshop, not to keep using all these little, quips from, whatever. But like, really, there's a reason why people say these things. You can just sit there and spin the narrative. And this is so when I'm on the Scary Guy podcast, which you guys can listen to, he was like, your father is so good. He's so convincing. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what they do. And the last thing you say to him, I believe that you believe that. And I was like, well, yes, Gary, you have to understand that he's had almost 30 years to prepare this narrative. So if you're sitting in you can convince yourself of anything. I could convince myself, you put me in a cage for long enough, I'll convince myself that the sky is pink and convince you of it for sure. I mean, it's a coping mechanism. Forget like the sociopathy, the narcissism, the this, that, the other. Forget all of that. At the fundamental core of all this shit is a coping mechanism. Coping mechanism for me and a coping mechanism for him. For him to sort of come to grips with what he's done and then sell that new narrative that he wants to construct.
Right.
He sells it to himself so he can sell it to you. Because how can you convince somebody if you don't believe the bullshit you're shilling, right?
Very true.
I don't know. That's my opinion. Let's continue, though. This is great.
Okay.
What you must do to prepare yourself for those who see you as a target. If someone goads you into a fight and you respond, then you may be liable for a lawsuit. They will want a piece of your money. If you have a car and someone gets injured, they can sue you or George above the level of insurance to get your money. Please do not be so stupid to think that there are nice people in Mansfield who will not do something like that to you. Trust me, there are those in your school right now who, quote, know, and they are waiting for their shot at you. Be cautious, not paranoid, but do not be stupid or naive. Now, that's good advice in a sort of way. But
right.
The whole reason that all of this has happened is because you fucking murdered my mother.
Right. Exactly.
And it is hard not to be paranoid. And this is again, so this is again this part of it, manipulation, where it's like he's like, trust me, you will go through this, because now he's pumped me up. He's then trying to convince me of a narrative that doesn't exist, which he was really good to my mother and I, and was a really great father, and Sherry was jealous of it, so of course he was a great father. Then how didn't get a fair trial, is completely innocent, then warning me that people are going to come after me, and then what does he do? He's setting himself up to be the savior for all of that. I'm your dad. I guarantee this is where this is going. I mean, it's already gone there anyways.
Fantastic
I'm your
fatherly
dad,
advice.
here looking out for you. I am not saying these things to make you crazy or anxious. I want you to be alert and not fooled. I do not make the mistakes your mother and I made. Yes, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. It was my wish even as a child when I took care of birds and animals, etc. I had to work hard to get to be a physician. I worked a full-time job as a computer operator, then a computer room supervisor at the hospital at the University of Pennsylvania while I was a full-time undergraduate student. I worked from 4 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. Monday through Friday and overtime as required. I did this while I was going to school in the daytime. I slept in the back of a car during the day when possible while waiting for classes. I did not go to the movies or football games or hardly anything else because I could not achieve my goals to be a physician if I did those other things. My parents could not pay for my education. I had to earn it the hard way. No free rides. I am not complaining to you. I want you to understand that if you want something bad enough, you will work very hard for it, as I did. Well, no shit. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree on that one, that's for sure. It is that same attitude about this conviction that causes me to continue the fight for my innocence. Tom Adgate and his crew believe in me. The Akron Beacon Journal believes in me. Ted Joy believes in me. He's a reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. There are countless others who believe in my innocence, but regardless, I must fight for my freedom. I must fight now as I did to get my education and my goals as a physician. So it's very...
And how can these people believe in his innocence when the body of your mother was found in the basement of the house he bought for his mistress?
But we don't get into that.
Who in the world would believe that?
But we don't get into that because that's not important.
Yeah, of course. It's facts. It's not important.
I mean, it's just, so then he goes on. You are your own man. No problems with that. That is what your mother and I would want to see. But we also want to see some guidelines about your life and career plans. They are the pitfalls that mommy and I encountered. Work hard and be cautious. Trust no one. ! I am not being cynical about trust. You just do not wander down the road like Little Red Riding Hood and have the wolf jump out at you. Understand? Be cautious and alert. It looks like the wolf is jumping out at me right now. The wolf is jumping out right here in this letter.
This is the wolf.
Because the wolf wants me to rescind my testimony so he can get out of prison. That's what the wolf wants.
Right. And he's wanted that
The whole time.
How many years? 35 years?
Well, yeah. Well, now he's wanted that for 30, but this is, at this point, he was, 4 years in?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. You can be anything you want to be. Anything. It is up to you. I can only guide you and pray for you. You must draw from the inner strength that is in your blood. You can do that. Concentrate and be faithful to your heritage. You will not lose. I personally would have liked to have had you raised under Uncle Charlie's roof, but that is past now. So Uncle Charlie, my Uncle Charles is my father's brother. He was best friends with my mother. And when all this happened, he abandoned me, just like the rest of my family. Just know that.
Huh.
Still, to this day, March 9th, 2022, doesn't talk to me. When I called him during COVID to make sure he was okay, and then I asked him, I think I was like half in the bag. I called him again like a couple of days later. It was COVID and everybody was getting wasted. And I called him and I asked him, why didn't you take me in? Why weren't you in my life? Why can't you be in my life now? Why don't you ever pick up the fucking phone and call me, man? Like, what is wrong with you? I'm your godson. You said you would protect me. You never did.
Right?
Nothing. Still haven't heard from him. 2 years later. Every time I communicate with that man, it's always me doing something. It's exhausting. The last time I heard from him, like that he actually initiated contact with me, was in 2010. So this is 12 years ago, when my father was up for parole and he wanted me to put together money to send to my father, like $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 to send to my father to pay for my father's lawyer so he could get paroled. I don't think I had $25, let alone $25,000.
So why didn't he do it?
I was a
if he
starving
so
artist.
concerned?
He claimed that, and he has plenty of money, I'm sure. He works for the government. That he couldn't do it because he's in the government. He's in the Navy. They would find out. They would trace it. I'm like, no, that's not true. You probably don't want to, but you feel compelled to ask me to do it. I mean, it's so insane. Like the insidious, insane nature of all of this is just.
Thanks, Uncle Charlie.
It's never underestimate the predictability of someone with a fundamental lack of integrity. I said this to somebody the other day. Some of the anxieties you are now experiencing might have been avoided or more easily answered. But the Zieglers are good people, and I have no compunctions about their care or love for you. I am thankful they have been so generous to you. Perhaps you could take your first year of school at OSU Mansfield. Going away to college is not always the answer. In particular, if you do not have the focus you need to concentrate on schoolwork and goals. Sometimes that is better achieved when you are living at home, like going to school at OSU Mansfield for a year, then transferring to another school. After that, when you are more comfortable, could transfer to main campus after that, or after the local experience and not lose anything. Please pardon the spelling. He's typing on a typewriter, by the way, I can tell. First of all, dude, you don't know what it's like. First of all, dude, because of the destruction and the craziness and the crazy shit you did, you have no idea what it's like. As you say in this letter, I have nothing to be ashamed of. You have no idea what it's like to live in the shadow of a fucking murderer, let alone like the most famous one in your state at the time, and be the one who testified. Like, you have no idea what my fucking life is like, bro. Like, I could not wait to get out of Mansfield when I was 18. I could not wait. I mean, I stayed in Ohio as long as I could till I was 20. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is
needed a fresh start.
Manipulation and gaslighting. Oh, of course, yeah. But this is, again, manipulation, gaslighting, not understanding, no compassion, no empathy, because he's a sociopath, of not understanding that, I'm sorry, like, this is a great time to insert the narrative of, hey, I'm sorry that your life is so fucked because of what I did, and that you feel like you need to run away from the community that raised you, or you feel that you need to like leave the nest because you're judged, or people look at you funny, or people don't treat you well, or they don't treat you well because of the shit that I did. No, there's no accountability. There's no responsibility. There's none of it. It's absurd. These letters are just crazy. But I'm hoping that you guys are really gleaning some insight here, because this is typical stuff. So he says,
Yes.
it is more my anxieties that are trying to guide you rather than any frustrations you might have. But that's what they say, that parents try to relive their lives through their children. Guess what I want for you is to not have the same sorrows and fears that I had when I was younger, which is only natural. The same sorrows and fears. No, you just made sure that my sorrows and fears were like fucking 5 million times worse. Sorrows of not having my family, my mother, a safe place to live. Like, what if foster care? I was orphaned. Are you fucking kidding me? And if you guys are, I'm not angry, so I don't mean to be yelling. I'm annoyed, and I'm just very passionate about this because this is just bullshit. It's just like when you read this stuff and you start to confront these people and you start to recognize these things for what they are, like you're like, this is what you see, and then you get really aggravated by it, and you're just like, and then you start to, when you're me right now and you're starting, I mean, I'm sure Brenda, you feel the same way, right? Mm-hmm. You are now I'm now starting to go, like, realize that you're saying this to like a 16-year-old kid who forget like the anxieties and stuff. Like, I'm also going through puberty and girls and driving, and I wasn't allowed to have a car at that time, and I was working and going to school and figuring out what my life was.
Right.
Like, there's a lot going on in my world.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's not just my world. There's a lot that goes on in any teenager's world. Girl, boy, whatever. There's a lot going on. You're going through these changes in hormones and everything, and shit gets wacky, and that's already enough to cause enough anxiety, let alone all this other bullshit,
Right.
It's so insane. And it's just a very simple way of just like, oh yeah, I don't want you to do this. On my clothing, they are yours. Tell George and Susan then you call Sherry and tell her. I have already written her about this. Chrissy will keep some things, but will not be keeping my clothing. If you want the clothes, then ask. No one will bite your head off. Asks. I don't think Chrissy can wear my sweaters and ski stuff, etc. You can. Plus, you can have all the great ties that I had for so long. I want you to have the clothes. I guess.
Did you ever do that?
I do have his clothes. I do have some of his ties still, I think, or maybe I got rid of them. I don't know. I did. I don't know. I don't wear ties. I don't think I honestly don't think I have worn a tie in almost 20 years.
Yeah, I haven't never seen you in one.
Thank God.
Yep.
It's a costume.
See,
Anyways,
if you had
but
been
that doesn't matter. Like, to anyone who wears ties and suits and ties to the office, I commend you. I'm a jeans, a t-shirt, and cool looking Nikes guy. For the most part.
Yep.
Call Sherry or Charlotte. Charlotte was her mother, and ask to talk to your sister Chrissy. Ask them to allow a visit for you both to get a McDonald's or pizza or something together. If you do not ask, then it is interpreted that you do not care and that you do not want contact with Chrissy. Do not allow that to happen to you. I want my children to love each other and to be with each other, not estranged from each other. But the bottom line is that you must ask and must be persistent. When you do not do this, people might interpret it as a lack of caring on your part, and I know that is not the question. That is not you. I know you are caring and feeling individual. I know that only so well. So what's interesting is I did get to see Chrissy a few times when I was younger, and we and George and Susan were my adopted parents were very, very good about this, and really tried to forge a relationship. Specifically, even when I didn't like it, I didn't want to see Sherry. They were like, "We want you to have a relationship with your sister. If we could try to make this happen," which they did. I mean, they were great about it. So nobody needed to force them to do that,
Right.
What is interesting is the part where he says, I don't want you guys to be estranged. Well, probably the best way for them not to be estranged is, I don't know, you could have just divorced my mother and married Sherry and had her, and then we wouldn't be estranged. You didn't have to kill my mother and put us all through this fucking circus. Like, again, he's so disconnected from reality that he doesn't understand, or he does understand, he's ignoring the fact, is probably the truth of all this.
Probably.
Is the fact that you put us through so much fucking bullshit, man, that we didn't, like, how we're lucky we talk. Like, we're lucky we're functioning and able to do this. We're not caught up in the corner, holding like, it's so.
He just acts like, oh, it's just another day, and
It's just
make
another
sure you
day.
have a relationship with your sister.
Pink. The sky is pink. The ocean is yellow, and and the snow is green.
He acts like he's just out of town.
He's just out of town. He's taking a moment. Like he didn't go to. He's at camp. He's at camp. I will be very anxious to see you again. It has been too long. I do not want to be separated from my children. I miss you very much. I miss Chrissy very much. Although I write to both of you and send you both pictures of myself, I want to see my children. Someday you will understand this. My fight for freedom is as much about my children as it is for myself. I cannot allow either of you to be stigmatized by the unjust and illegal conviction. I will not allow that to occur. So he does understand. So he does say that we're stigmatized, because he started the letter saying that there was no stigma, that there's nothing to be ashamed of, and this, that, and the other. But then he's saying, I don't want you to be stigmatized, which recognize that we are stigmatized. So you're just completely contradicting yourself from 2 pages ago, brother.
But you're stigmatized by the unjust and illegal
actions
of what happened to him. Yeah, like it's all happening to him.
Anyhow, I am looking forward to seeing you, hugging you, kissing you, and seeing what a fine young man you have grown into in spite of all the troubles this quote-unquote nightmare has brought us all. I will arrange for pictures, short notice, but I might be able to pull it off. Remember, be courteous and diplomatic and cooperative, but not walked over, with people. More will be accomplished with honey rather than vinegar. You are a good person. You are normal. I am very proud of you. Never forget that. Also, never forget that I love you very much. Bundles and bundles, and I always shall. See you this Friday. Can't wait. You are always in my prayers and thoughts. Keep me in yours. Love, XXXOOO, Daddy.
How often did you go visit him?
Not that often when I was like a kid, really. I didn't really start visiting him until I went to Ohio University School of Music. And he was at Lucasville prison, which those of you that are from Ohio remember Lucasville. Those of you that don't probably remember Lucasville, because that was the prison that the inmates took over, and President Bill Clinton had to send in like the National Guard and all this. And was it? Yeah, because Bush was out of office. Bush Sr. was out of office. So yeah, it was a whole thing. The prisoners took over. It was really a unique experience and terrifying for the prison guards, because I don't know if a lot of, obviously, those of you that watch this, you guys aren't going to know anything about prison. At least I hope not. But like in prison, there'll be 2,000 or let's say 3,000 inmates in a prison, which is, there's more than that. But let's just say there's 3,000. There's usually like one prison guard per like 50 or 60 or 45 or something. So when you figure, and the thing that keeps, much like probably, and not to be a conspiracy theorist, but like the thing that keeps prisons from necessarily being like overrun or people, because you say, okay, so it's basically 45-1 is what you're telling me, and the thing is that in prisons, the way that they control is they let it control itself, right? So you have people that are black, you have people that are white, you have people that are Mexican, you have people that are Asian, you have people that are black but they're Muslim, you have people that are white but they're Aryan, right? Nazis. And then you have them, they all form these little factions inside of the prison, right? But what happened specifically with Lucasville is the Muslims and the blacks partnered together, and the whites and the Aryans partnered together, and they came together and they said, look around, bro. Like there's 45 of us to one of them. We can take this motherfucker over. And they did for like 11 days or 12 days.
Wow.
And when I went to visit him when he was in Lucasville, that was one of the scariest prisons I've ever been in. Because I remember like going in and there was this long, scary corridor that you had to go through to get in. It was like really creepy. It was like you were going into a bunker. It was and knowing when it just happened there at the time, because it happened, I think, in 1993, maybe it was 94, but it was pretty scary. But yeah, Lucasville. That's when I would see him more regularly. I think it was like maybe twice a month, because it was not far from where I was going to school.
Gotcha.
And that's when I was sort of laying the cool things. And then he and I had he had a massive falling out. He sent me this letter, which I'm sure I'll find one of these days, where he said something that I said something about my mother to my Uncle Charles, and don't talk about your mother that way. That's disrespectful. And I was like, oh, dude, you're crazy. And I was like, I can't talk to you. And I don't think I'd spoke to him for years and years. I moved out to California. I was like, no, I'm done.
And you had never said anything to...
Of course not. I wasn't speaking to my uncle, and I wasn't speaking to anybody.
No.
It just was so ridiculous.
He just
Wow,
made
that
up
letter was
stuff?
a lot to digest. Yeah, I'm sure. Obviously. That was a lot. I mean, I'm sure you could glean things too. Like, for those of you that just listened to this, I'm sure you're like, well, but he said these nice things about you, and he closed with this nice thing. Yes, that's, and I'll take those things. Sure. But it's all part of the manipulation and control. And you're saying this to a 16-year-old kid whose mother you murdered for 4.5 years, almost 5 years before that. Literally 5 years before that, because this is November of 1994. December 31st, 1980, like 5 years before that. You murdered 5 years ago from writing this letter. You were premeditating the murder of this guy's mother, your wife, while your girlfriend was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane when you start to think about it in the context of what it really is, right?
Right.
But that's why I read these letters for you guys, because I want you guys to see, and I know that you guys ask for this because you're in these relationships and you're discovering that, oh my God, this shit is crazy, because it is crazy. And that's why I do this. So you guys can literally listen and say, oh my God, like, what is going on? Or how do I deal with this? And hopefully my insight, you guys can learn from this, because I've already gone through all this shit. Like, you guys don't need to go through this shit, because I've already been it. So take my life and use it, I'm happy for it. I can take it. People do this. This is how you manipulate and you control someone. We're seeing it with the whole population right now. And over in Europe, how people are being manipulated. They don't even think a war is happening. It's insane. This is it on a very microcosmic scale. But it doesn't make it any different. It's all the same principles of control and manipulation. And it's good to learn from these things. So, well, Brenda, do you feel you've learned more about the Diary of a Sociopath, part 487,938?
Yeah, and I know you've got a gazillion letters from him, and it seems like they all kind of have a theme every time that you read one. So it's interesting. His take on the world is very interesting.
Unique and very convenient too. Especially he's just completely glazes over or glosses over the fact that you created this nightmare. Like when he leaves the letter saying, and then this nightmare for all of us. No, the nightmare was created by you. You created the nightmare. All of this nightmare is, this whole thing. I mean, again, this is the line. I am looking forward to seeing you, hugging you, in spite of all the troubles and seeing what a fine young man you've grown into in spite of all the troubles this nightmare has brought us all. Well, I'm confident to say that I did grow into a fine young man despite the nightmare that you fucking created.
That's right.
Mic drop on that one. I recorded this episode last night, and I had a really hard time sleeping because I think that as much as I enjoy sharing this stuff with you guys, it is my life. And it's really sad to me in a lot of ways that people behave like this, especially my father, having written this to a 15-year-old child, 16-year-old child, his son, whose mother he murdered. And the things that he's relating in the letters, and he's talking about relationships with women, which he was a chronic womanizer and a horrible person. And he's giving me lessons about having these lifetime relationships and things. It's all just really weird. And that part of me was trying to reconcile with the fact that, was he trying to have this little bit? Because honestly, like at the end of the day, he is my father, and I don't want to believe that he's a horrible person, despite evidence to the contrary. But I do really want to and look, I'm saying this for you guys because I'm sure you guys have situations like this in your lives where you're dealing with people and you are trying to make sense of it. And it's okay to be confused by it. That's really all I'm saying, because I was. And I feel when I read these letters, I want to have that moment where, is my father giving me advice? And should I take this as fatherly advice? And reading it, 25 plus years later, 27 years later, I do feel like that, he was reaching out to me, because their manipulation is so insidious, but that's the whole thing. And it's so key to recognize this, but it doesn't make it any less painful or any less heartbreaking that people do this. When I'm reading the letter, I can't help but think, is he really writing it to me, or is he writing it to someone else? Because it feels like he's trying to take this position of like, if someone reads this, I mean, obviously we didn't know podcasting was going to happen 30 years ago, but it feels like he was writing it for a greater audience. And I'm thinking, was he thinking I was going to share that with the parole board or with attorneys to help him get out of prison? It's really kind of an insidious sort of thing that lies far beyond the text. Anyways, that is what I think, but I want to hear what you guys think, how this material affects you. Please like, subscribe, post in the comments, send me DMs. All of this stuff really helps me create the content that I feel benefits you guys. It helps me a lot to talk about these things, but I really want to provide you guys with what you want to hear and see out of this podcast. So on that note, I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Murder. Thanks, y'all. This podcast is made possible by support from listeners just like you. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible. Find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Collier Landry. The film A Murder in Mansfield is available on Investigation Discovery, Discovery Plus, and Amazon Prime Video. This podcast is a production of Don't Touch My Radio in association with RSA Entertainment. Please visit mpmpodcast.com to show your support today.